Okay, guys, now we're into Act 1, Scene 2 of the play. It's a really interesting scene. It's all about the subplot. Don't forget that's the plot which develops the dynamics of the relationship between Gloucester and his sons, Edmund and Edgar. We're on page 12 to 14 in your paper 2 book. As usual, you look through and read through those summaries on page 12. And then we go and we look at the quotes. Okay? But don't forget, this scene is all about Edmund and his 2 soliloquies. The first soliloquy, which is a really, really interesting one, is the one in which he reveals his plan to the audience. So it's the one in which he reveals his frustrations, his sense of resentment, his sense that the world is an unfair place. And it's a soliloquy in which, in the most striking language, Edmund says, I've had enough of this. I'm going to change my destiny. Now, let's talk about his destiny for a moment by looking at these quotes. The soliloquy opens with the line, wherefore should I stand in the plague of custom? Now that, folks, is what is known as a rhetorical question. When he says why, wherefore means why. Why should I stand in the plague of custom? He already knows the answer. And the answer is, no, I shouldn't. It would be idiotic of me to accept the plague of custom. Now again, if we don't know what that term means, then it makes no sense. So think about what that phrase, and this is an example of Shakespeare's use of figurative language, what that phrase plague of custom means. This is an example of, if you were asked about not just Edmund, but also language in the play, or justice or injustice, is one of those quotes that you can use to refer to lots of different topics or questions, or use to answer lots of different questions. We'll come to the questions after we've done these summaries of the scenes. But a plague is a disease that will kill you. A plague is a disease that you want to avoid at all costs. A plague is something which will destroy your life. Custom is tradition. And what Edmund is referring to as the plague of custom is the traditional treatment received by people like him. By people like him, I mean illegitimate children. Edmund's mother was not married to his father, the Earl of Gloucester, when he was conceived. And as a result, Edmund's life is marked from the moment of his birth by the stigma, remember that word from the previous videos, of illegitimacy. And he's frustrated. He says, why should I allow my life to be ruined by this idiotic tradition? It's an interesting question. He goes on to talk about his resentment at the injustice he has received at the hands of his father. He says, why should I permit the curiosity of nations to deprive me, deprivation, unjust treatment, for that I am some 12 or 14 moonshines lag of my brother? So we learn some important information here. He's a year younger than his older brother, Edgar, who is, of course, legitimate. And then we get this wonderful, wonderful build-up of intensity with the questions, why bastard? Wherefore base? When my dimensions are as well compact as honest madam's issue. Again, look at the rhetorical questions. Why should I accept my position as bastard? Bastard is the term that means a child whose parents were not married. Wherefore base? Think about that image of base, baseless. Edmund is obsessed with that image. To be base means to be at the bottom. As an illegitimate child, as somebody who was born into illegitimacy, I'll move that across a bit. Edmund is at the bottom of society, and he's saying, I'm not going to accept that. I'm as good as my brother. And when he refers to honest madam, that's Gloucester's wife. She's honest because when she had sex and conceived her child, she was married. Your issue are your children. Honest madam's issue, that's Edgar. And we are in now to the realms of sibling rivalry. We are talking about something that is so familiar in the world in which we live today. The idea that a child might feel that he has been unjustly treated because of a parent's favoritism, or because of a set of circumstances beyond which he has no control, or over which he has no control. In the soliloquy, he continues, and we as an audience learn his plan. He says, "Legitimate Edgar, I must have your land." And then in one of my favourite quotes, and I'm going to say that 100 times when we do these videos, in a brilliant use of juxtaposition, a term you should be getting used to by now, he says, "Edmund the base shall top the legitimate. I grow, I prosper." Now, what does that mean? It means my daughter's device, I don't know how to switch it off. Anyway, it means that he is going to usurp his brother Edgar's position as his father's heir. Edgar is going to inherit everything. He is going to be at the top. He will become the Earl of Gloucester when his dad dies. He will get all of the lands, all the money, all of the titles, all of the prestige, all of the respect. And he says, no, no, no. Edmund says, no, I'm going to take that for myself. He is going to be ruthless, and he is going to use deception, lies, manipulation, the exploitation of the weakness that he perceives in his father and his brother's character to make a future for himself. And morality, or the accepted rules of society, a society for which he has contempt, will not stop him. In order to achieve his goal, he has forged a letter. And this letter is evidence of his Machiavellian personality. Niccolo Machiavelli, famous Renaissance writer, you might have heard of him, wrote a famous book called The Prince. And in that book, he talked about politics and what politicians in his world were like. And he said, for politicians, there was no barrier placed on their tactics. That morality would never be something that would stop them acting to achieve their goal. That the ends, famously, the translation, justify the means. That it doesn't matter what you have to do to get what you want as long as you get what you want. And that's why Edmund has forged a letter. And the letter purports to be from Edgar. And it purports to say, let's kill Dad. Dad's old. I'm sick and tired of waiting for him to die so I can inherit. Help me, Edmund. Get rid of Dad and I'll look after you. The letter is a lie. It is an act of deception. It will, Edmund knows, if his plan is successful, destroy Edgar's life. But he doesn't care because he is Machiavellian. For him, the ends justify the means. It is really interesting to me to think about Gloucester and the parallels that we see between Gloucester and Lear. In Act 1, Lear mistreats and banishes a daughter who loves him and rewards two children who despise him. Here in Act 1, Scene 2, we see a very similar story. Gloucester receives the letter. He believes it completely because he is a man who is impetuous. Remember that word? We used it already. He is rash. He doesn't stop to think. He is gullible and naive, and he shouldn't be given his seniority and his age, but he is. And when he reads that letter, his response is filled with spite and anger. He says, abhorred villain. Abhorred means hated. Unnatural, detested, brutish villain. Worse than brutish. A brilliant moment in the play. It's a moment of triumph for Edmund. Now, I want to talk for a moment about a technique called dramatic irony. This is the technique whereby the audience are in on the secret. We know what Edmund is doing, and we're watching Gloucester respond to the lie. We know it's a lie, but Gloucester doesn't know. That dramatic irony, that technique is used throughout the play by Shakespeare. There are many occasions when we know something and one or more character does not know. And that creates a real sense of engagement and tension, and a real sense that the play is a play which grips an audience and holds the audience's attention. So when Gloucester reacts by condemning his son Edgar, his innocent son Edgar, look at the language, the repetition. Villain is there twice, brutish is there twice. When Gloucester reacts in that way and we see him walking into Edmund's trap, we know what's going on and he doesn't. When Gloucester leaves to go and find his son Edgar and challenge him on the basis of this letter, we have the trigger for Edmund's second soliloquy. And it's marvellous. It's just marvellous. He's done a bad thing and he's like this. He's delighted with himself. He is gleeful because his tactics have been successful. And this makes him such an interesting character because he's a bad man who enjoys being bad, who celebrates the success of his schemes. And when he does that, he does it in front of us. That's not something we normally see. So he's unusual and therefore fascinating. Look what he says. A credulous father and a brother noble, whose nature is so far from doing harms that he suspects none, on whose foolish honesty my practices ride easy. I see the business. Let me, if not by birth, have lands by wit, all with me's meet that I can fashion fit. There's so much going on there. Let's have a look at some of the important parts of that quote. First of all, the reference to his father as credulous. Credulous means foolish, gullible, naive, easy to lie to. Well, malleable, that's a great word. Malleable means easy to manipulate. He's gloating about how easy it was to trick his father. He's laughing about the fact that his brother is noble. He recognises the fact that Edgar is a good man. And he likes the fact that he's out to exploit Edgar's trusting nature to his own advantage. And he has utter contempt for Edgar's morality. And he describes his honesty as foolish. Now, guys, there's a term that we learn in English. It's called oxymoron. O-X-Y-M-O-R-O-N. You'll have seen it in the word cloud at the beginning of this video, and you'll see it in the knowledge check at the end of the video. Oxymoron. Look at those words, foolish and honesty. They shouldn't go together. We're not raised to regard honesty as foolish. We're raised to regard honesty as admirable, noble, a sign of a decent and virtuous human being. But in the world that Edmund exists in, I'll rephrase that. In Edmund's perception of the world, to be honest is to be a fool because the world is corrupt. So it's a brilliant use of language by Shakespeare. Two words which tell us so much about Edmund and his willingness to exploit his brother and his ability to spot his brother's weakness. He's boasting about how his practices ride easy. The joy, I mentioned the word glee, he takes from the success of his plan is really notable. And then, of course, the wonderful, let me, if not by birth, have lands by wit, all with me's meet, that I can fashion fit. And that's where you write that word down in the box, Machiavellian. Will I try using the pen for the crack? I haven't tried to use it yet. I wonder, will it work? Not really. Anyway, I'll use this. No, won't work. Machiavellian. M-A-C. Machiavellian. It's a great word, isn't it? Learn it and use it. It means somebody who is, as I said, willing to do whatever it takes to break whatever rules there are to achieve their goals. And that quote, all with me's meet that I can fashion fit, means I will do whatever I have to get what I want. It's a fantastic moment. And by the way, it also reminds me of another word we need to describe Edmund. I'm enjoying using this pen now. And that word is duplicitous, two-faced, dishonest, a liar, somebody who's not to be trusted. We will move in the next video into Act 1, Scene 3.